Race, white. Ethnicity, non-Hispanic. Place of birth, El Salvador. Potentially someone who also voted in the 2020 election. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you haven't been plugged into the news over the past couple of days. So this has already been talked about quite a bit. A lot of people have already covered it, including this gentleman right here that I recommend you go watch and subscribe to him. He's great. He's great. I had no idea he existed until this story came out. And while I was rifling through everything, I stumbled across Brylan Riggs. It's good stuff. It's he covers basically current events from a Christian perspective, which is awesome. It's great. I absolutely love it. He covered a lot of the basics. He went into scripture a bit, very briefly, but really, really good stuff. Very important thing to consider, in my opinion. And then he also talked very briefly about gun control. So what this is going to be, some of it will be review if you already watched his video. However, a lot of new information has come out. I want to expand personally on some other things a bit more, and then a few surprises along the way. So what happened? Woman firing gun at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church, killed. Child in critical condition. They have an update here on the Christian Post as of yesterday. So this is what I'm saying. New information continues to come out. Police in Houston, Texas confirmed Monday that the individual who carried out an attempted shooting at Pastor Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church on Sunday afternoon was Genesse Moreno. Despite using multiple aliases, including Jeffrey, and she also changed her last name, why? If it's for the reasons of transgenderism, why the change of last name? It's not gendered. Last names aren't gendered. So that alone is red flag. It means likely that what she was going through, what he or she, whatever, was going through, was not just transgenderism. They were either trying to escape their criminal record, which we will go into is quite long, or they were trying to escape the fact that perhaps she was in the country in an illegal manner. That much I don't know for sure. I haven't been able to find anything definitive on that. There's a lot of people assuming that. I don't like to assume, so I'm not going to say that. Just things to think about, though. You don't normally change your last name if it's for the means of transgenderism. You change your first name because first names are gendered. Investigators found Moreno has consistently been identified as a female throughout their investigation, and we'll play the video of law enforcement talking about that. The suspect had a lengthy criminal history as well as a mental health history. The individual walked into the church and pointed an AR-15 at an off-duty officer who shot the suspect, who later died on the scene. The word Palestine was written on the suspect's rifle. So here's the thing. Most reports are saying the words Free Palestine were on the rifle. Does it make that much of it? Well, kind of it does, because Free Palestine is a very activist-friendly statement at the moment, and Palestine is a bit more vague. I think that's information that should be readily available. I also find it interesting the way that the Christian Post decided to explain it. The individual walked into the church and pointed an AR-15 at an off-duty officer. That's not what happened. The individual walked into the church, fired several rounds, killing and injuring a child, then pointed the gun at an off-duty officer who then took her down. That's what happened. And we'll also get into the fact that men are always blamed for shootings. And statistically, there's a reason for that. However, this is just another one on the docket, and we'll talk about that later because the docket is getting quite long, of examples where it is not men that are doing the shooting. And then all of them almost are great examples of how then good men who are not immoral, who are not lost, and who have not bent the knee to culture are the ones who do come in and they make things right. And in this scenario, that was taking this individual out of our reality. I think it's the right move. When somebody comes into a church and starts shooting it up and so much as injures a child. Other reports are saying that the child was not expected to live. I haven't seen an update on that. A lot of the time it's hard to get updated information on things having to do with children and juveniles in situations like this. So it's hard to say. I'm not going to read through all this because I'm sure you've already heard it. If not, you can find it. It's very easy to find. Hey, real quick, could you do some of the YouTube stuff, like the thumbs up button, and leave a comment and maybe share the video if you could? You know that we're bogged pretty heavy on this channel, so anything you could do to help that, I'd appreciate it. Let's go back. I want to go through some of this. Sara Gonzales has done a lot of reporting on this specific scenario, this circumstance. So she's got breaking. Lakewood Church shooter identified as transgender, legal name Genesse Moreno, but went by the name Jeffrey. We've got her sheet right here. Female, white. Yeah. I don't know about that. Non-Hispanic, 5'5", 190 pounds, eyes brown, hair black, Place of birth, El Salvador. Some of that is conflicting to me. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my American mind. You got another user on Twitter who took Sara's post and added and pointed out what seemed to be the obvious things to point out. Race, white, ethnicity, non-Hispanic, and place of birth, El Salvador. They're skewing the numbers again. And this is one of the problems with all of this. I already spoke briefly about how men are always blamed for shootings. Okay, well, in the past couple of years, that is shifting. Many females are more involved in violence now. It gets very muddy and gets very complicated. Why is that? Well, because a lot of these women who are now participating in these types of violent events, in often cases, they're involved in the trans community. So if they identify as a male, such as the case for this individual, what do you think the statistics say? Do you think they're going to read that it was a female? Probably not. What about the other shootings over the past couple of years that were female at birth, trans to a male, and then goes and shoots a school up or something? Do you think those statistics say that it was a female? I can assure you at least most of them, they do not. They list it as male, which is inaccurate. It's a lie. It's not reality. Statistics are becoming less and less usable to actually have a grip on what is happening in the world. And that's a very sad thing, because it wasn't always like that. So glad to see this post says, so glad to see the Houston police focus on the important things, like which pronouns to use for the mentally ill Texas church shooter. So I'm going to play this real quick. This is Houston PD.
So she has utilized both male and female names, but through all of our investigation to this point, talking with individuals, interviews, documents, Houston Police Department reports, she has been identified this entire time as female, she, her, and so we are identifying her as Genesse Moreno, Hispanic female.
Why that is the focus at all, why it needs to be discussed, other than in a matter-of-fact way to identify the individual. Nobody cares what the person identified as. That's who was the person, actually in real life, not in the reality that they've made for themselves, in actual reality where the rest of us all live. That's the only information, in my opinion, that we actually need. This user got here, they're pulling from Sara Gonzales. Sara Gonzales, with a bombshell of a story, the Lakewood Church shooter was an El Salvadorian immigrant who was detained by ICE. Genesse Moreno, who also went by the alias Jeffrey, had a voting record in 2020. When people ask, quote, where is evidence that illegals vote in elections, ... basically. And this is another thing that is obviously being discussed because of this. What's happening with immigration, we've talked about kind of ad nauseum, and everybody is, so I'm not going to go into it. But I have even been on the side where the goal is not to have illegal immigrants vote. I don't think so. I think the goal is congressional seats. They just need to be here. We just need more people from anywhere. It doesn't matter where. It's not a Hispanic thing. It's anywhere. Anywhere in the world. Just bring human bodies into the country and put them in certain states specifically, and congressional seats are affected. Okay, but on the flip side, if then those people can vote, it adds a whole different dynamic to what could potentially be problematic. It doesn't have to be problematic, in my opinion, but it's something that can potentially become problematic. And it seems as though that's the direction that this is going to go. And it's been talked about in other stories as well recently. So it's not a crazy thing to talk about or to wonder about or to have some kind of fear about, a healthy fear about. Another post from Sara Gonzales. They want you to believe the shooter was not trans, even though she was born Genesse and later identified as Jeffrey. And pictures prove she became significantly more masculine looking. They want you to believe that the shooter was white, even though records show she was from El Salvador. They want you to believe just the word Palestine was written on the gun, and it's totally unconnected to her anti-Semitic writings. And they definitely don't want you asking questions about what her path to citizenship was that allowed her to vote in the 2020 election, with a rap sheet as long as hers, which is quite long. Please don't use your brains. They'd prefer you blame the gun and call it a day. So, men are bad. Men commit violence. Okay, statistically, the majority Sure, of these type of events. When you're talking domestic violence, those statistics are kind of different. The assumed with domestic violence is that men are just beating the hell out of their wives. Statistics show that's not actually accurate. The difference becomes somewhat nuanced because oftentimes when a wife hits a husband, he doesn't do anything about it. Maybe he'll hit back if he's an asshole, if he's a bad guy, but maybe he'll just turn the cheek and walk away because he is bigger, he is stronger. It's less damaging. Also, in most cases, if a man takes a woman to court over that, not a lot is probably going to happen. But reports of that are very high. They're very high. The flip is that if a man hits a woman, obviously she's probably going to suffer some kind of physical damage a bit more than he does when that's reversed. Understandably so. That doesn't mean that women don't hit men. So in a domestic situation, the statistics are very different. In these types of massacres, if you want to call them that, mass shootings of any kind, statistically, yes, it is predominantly men. Statistically, all violence is predominantly men. It's a biological thing, for sure. No doubt. Also, with that, just remember, America would not exist. Your freedom would not exist. Were men not violent, or were men not capable of violence. The only reason any of us have what we have is because men are capable of violence. It's a cold, hard reality. If you don't want to accept that, that's fine. You move somewhere else. Try to live your life without the beautiful things that you have that were acquired through violence, because there is always somebody who wants to take from you. And so you better hope there are men who are capable of protecting our country, our cities, our communities, predominantly men in police. It's predominantly men who protect, as well as predominantly men who do violent crime. Yes, but we don't ever talk about the protecting aspect of it. Remove all of the protection, and I promise you, you will not want to live where you live. Reality check. We need to be honest about these things, and we're not being. We're just demonizing men because they commit the violence. Okay, well, no, that's fine. That's true. Now let's talk about all the men who prevent it, all the men who stop it, all the men who die trying to stop it. In this scenario, 2 men with guns stopped it. How many people would she have shot? Extrapolate that to all the men who are horrible, who have committed other violent atrocities, who were stopped by a good man with a gun. Because it is predominantly, almost only, good men with guns who stop these things as well. But we don't want to talk about that. That's problematic. That doesn't fit what is trying to be shoved down your throat. But that is a cold, hard reality. Absolute reality. Now, last few things here. Sara Gonzales again, she did a great job. Here's a great mental health solution. She says, stop affirming someone's pretend gender and get them actual help. She's saying this in response to someone saying, it really doesn't matter the race, gender, or sexual orientation. We have a damn gun problem, exacerbated by poor mental health solutions. We don't have a gun problem. And race and gender matter because you guys made them matter. Most people were fine with just calling crime crime. Most people were fine with just wanting to stop that crime, period. It became a race thing. It became a gender thing. Most of us had no interest in that aspect of it. Just identify the crime, identify the individuals doing it, and put an end to it. You have made this a racial, gendered issue. So stop. You stop, we'll stop. Is kind of the way that I see that. Now, lives of TikTok in all her glory. Leftist activists are already coming to the defense of the trans Texas church shooter. They're shifting the blame onto us and claiming that this is the consequence for criticizing radical trans ideology. Expect to see the media follow a similar pattern. They did that with other cases of trans terrorism. So let's look real quick. We've already looked at this. Somebody commented, stop attacking them and they wouldn't have to fight back. What if somebody else on the other side of that aisle said that to them? That would never be accepted. It would never be accepted. Seems simple, they continue. You met a group who isn't going to sit back and take your pathetic attacks. It's wild. The justification is wild when it doesn't fit with the racial and gendered push. And this one is a great example of it not fitting what is being pushed down your throat. Have you tried not antagonizing people to the point they snap? Libs of TikTok on her personal account said a trans terrorist shot up a church in Texas yesterday. The media will try to make the story disappear. Trans terrorism is a serious threat. We need to talk about this more. That's when the person said, have you tried not antagonizing people to the point that they snap? So justification, justification, justification. There is no justification. There isn't. The funny thing is, I don't see this in reverse. I don't see some white male going, or black male, or Hispanic male, any male, going and doing a mass shooting. I don't see a bunch of men coming out and trying to justify it. I see pretty much everybody saying that this is atrocious, that this person got what they deserve, because usually, again, they're stopped by a good guy with a gun. There is an equal and opposite force, as there should be. Something to think about. And lastly, here's the docket. Here's the docket as it is right now. Colorado Springs shooter, non-binary. Nashville shooter, trans. Aberdeen shooter, trans. Denver school shooter, trans. Iowa school shooter, transgender fluid. Lakewood Church shooter, trans. The modern LGBTQ plus movement is radicalizing our youth into becoming violent extremists. It's kind of a sad reality of what is happening. And whenever I talk to people about this, I take men out of it. I take women out of it. I have no interest in any of that. I take race out of it. I don't personally care about any of that. I think it's totally irrelevant. All of that is made up garbage to try to get us all to pit against each other. Don't do that. Don't play that game. Remove all of that. What is the actual problem? Culture. Because culture in the United States affects all of us. Men, women, girls, boys, black, brown, white, offshade. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And even with immigration, people who are coming here and then setting up shop here and staying here permanently, they will assimilate into this culture. They will have kids here. Those kids will go to these schools. Those kids will become what this culture is. It's culture. It's nothing more than that. The rest is lies. The gender split is lies. The racial divide is lies. And if you fall for it, I don't know if I can respect you in any way at all. It's really hard. There is no race or gender when we're talking about violence. It's just culture. And the vast spectrum that we've seen between all of those categorizations has proven that. We all live here. We all engage in this society. We need to fix culture. In my opinion, we need to bring God back into things, but remove that for the people who aren't into, religion in any aspect. Culture. We all need to bring back some semblance of a community culture, of a culture of responsibility, where if you do something, you will suffer a consequence. A culture where men are much more on the side of just protection to death, which is what we're called to as Christians to be, to protect and to love and to die if need be. And I see a lot of that. I also see a lot of not that. I see a lot of very weak men who are very lost. Why? Culture. Women are called to do what? To serve and support. Not to be bossed around, not to be the receiver of a dictatorship, but to support and to serve. They're called to that. I see a lot of women still doing that. I also see a lot of women who are absolutely lost. Why? Culture. Same thing with kids. And none of that is racial. I see that. Black, brown, white, Asian, don't care. It's all throughout all of it. I don't see this changing until we can all agree on at least that. Stop making it racial. Stop making it gendered. Stop pretending that we can create a different reality other than the one we actually live in. And then we can bring back some kind of culture of community again. Until then, I don't see anything changing. Love y'all.